The Empire had watched Earth for 50 years. Their scout ships floated in the darkness beyond the moon, recording everything. They watched humans build schools. They watched humans sit in classrooms. They watched humans read books and write papers and argue about ideas. The commanders found this very amusing. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Burning Crown, and looked at the blue planet on his viewing screen. He had conquered 11 worlds. He had crushed species that had weapons and armies. But this world, this Earth, seemed like the easiest target he had ever seen. They spend their lives in education, his second officer reported. Their young ones sit in buildings for years just learning. They do not train for war. They do not build weapons. They just study. Laughed, it was a deep, rumbling sound. A planet of students. This will take hours, not days. He gave the order. 147 warships moved toward Earth. They did not hide. They did not sneak. They came in full view because they wanted the humans to see them. Fear was a weapon too. On Earth, it was a Tuesday morning. Captain Park was drinking his second cup of coffee in the Seoul Command Center when his screen turned red. He set down his cup very slowly. He had trained for this moment for 20 years. Part of him had always believed it would never actually come. "Contact confirmed," said Lieutenant from her station. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking slightly. 100+ vessels. They matched the profile. Stood up. The command center was silent. 30 people sat at their stations, waiting. They had all seen the classified files. They all knew that alien life existed. They all knew that someday someone would come. "Open a channel," said. "Let us hear what they want." The screen flickered. Admiral appeared. He was tall, almost 3 meters, with gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes were black and cold. When he spoke, his voice was translated by computer systems that humans had secretly developed decades ago. "People of Earth," said, "I am Admiral of the Empire. Your planet now belongs to us. You will surrender all resources. You will provide workers. You will obey all commands. Resistance is foolish. We have watched you. We know you are not warriors. You are teachers and students. Accept your place and you will be treated fairly." The transmission ended. "Looked at, they really think we are weak." "They see what we wanted them to see," replied. He walked to a panel on the wall and placed his hand on it. The panel scanned his palm. A red button appeared. This was Protocol 0. For 40 years, the world's governments had secretly worked together on this. Every nation, every scientist, every resource they could spare, all for this moment. "They looked at our schools," said quietly. "They did not ask what we were teaching." He pressed the button. Across the planet, things began to happen. In hidden bunkers under mountains, computers turned on. In the deep ocean, submarines that were not on any map received signals. Satellites that looked like communication devices opened their panels to reveal weapons that humanity had never publicly announced. The world's leaders received the alert. The President of the United States read the message and nodded. The Premier of China made a phone call. The Prime Minister of India gave orders. For the first time in human history, every nation was working as one. They had practiced this. They had planned this. They were ready. General Sung was an old man now. He had fought in wars when he was young. He had seen what humans could do to each other. That was why he had spent the last 30 years preparing for something worse. He sat in the Global Defense Center deep under the mountains of Korea and watched his screens light up. "All stations reporting," his aide said. "Protocol 0 is active worldwide." Sung closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered the day the first alien probe had been captured. He remembered the secret meetings where world leaders decided to hide the truth. He remembered the arguments, the fear, the slow building of hope. They had used their greatest strength, not weapons, not armies, knowledge. "Begin Phase 1, Sung ordered. "And may whatever gods exist forgive us for what we are about to teach them." In homes across the world, people looked up at the sky. They could see the alien ships now, dark shapes blocking the stars. Parents held their children. Some people cried. Some people prayed. But in military bases and hidden facilities, trained men and women moved with purpose. Dr. Shin was one of them. She was one of the few people who had spent her life studying the alien samples that humanity had secretly collected. She knew things about that did not know she knew. Their communication system uses quantum signals on a single band, she told her team. If we disrupt that band, their ships cannot coordinate. Can we do that? Asked her assistant, a young man named. Smiled, it was not a happy smile. We built a device 10 years ago. We have been waiting for a reason to use it. The fleet moved closer. Admiral watched Earth with satisfaction. There were no missiles launching, no ships coming to fight. The humans were doing exactly what he expected. They were freezing in fear. Pathetic, he said. I almost feel sorry for them. All that time spent in schools and they cannot even fight back. His communications officer turned to him. Admiral, we are receiving strange readings from the planet's surface. What kind of readings? Unknown, but there are energy signatures appearing in locations all over the world, hundreds of them. Frowned, this was unexpected, but it did not matter. What could a species of students do against the mightiest empire in the galaxy? He would learn the answer soon, and he would not like it. In Seoul, Captain Park stood before his team. They looked scared but determined. These were smart people, scientists, engineers, analysts. They saw this as weakness. They did not understand. They think education made us soft, said. They do not realize what we studied. We learned our own history. We learned every war, every weapon, every strategy that humans ever created. We took thousands of years of violence and we put it in books. And then we read those books very, very carefully. He turned to look at the alien ships on the screen. They wanted teachers and students. Let us show them what happens when students become the test makers. Nodded and began sending orders. Across the world, humanity prepared for its final exam. They had been studying for this their entire existence as a species. They had made a terrible mistake. They had looked at Earth and seen a peaceful, educated civilization. They had not understood that humans became educated specifically because they knew what they were without education. Monsters, killers, the most dangerous animals their planet had ever produced. The schools and universities were not signs of weakness. They were cages, and something very old and very dangerous was about to be let out. Admiral ordered his invasion force to descend. 12 landing zones in 12 major cities. Quick, overwhelming force. Standard procedure. He had no idea that standard procedure was about to become a death sentence. On Earth, billions of humans looked up at the descending ships. Most of them did not know about Protocol Zero. Most of them did not know about the secret weapons. But they all knew one thing that they did not. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other. They had become very, very good at it. And now, for the first time, they had a common enemy. The invasion had begun, but it would not end the way they expected. Not even close. The transport ships landed in 12 cities at the same time. Seoul, New York, London, Tokyo, Berlin, Moscow, Beijing, Sydney, Cairo, Mumbai, Johannesburg. Admiral had chosen these cities because they were large and important. He wanted to crush human spirit quickly. Commander watched from a hidden bunker 2 kilometers beneath the streets of Seoul. Screens showed him everything. Alien soldiers marched out of their ships in perfect lines. They wore dark armor that glowed with energy shields. They carried weapons that could melt steel. They looked unstoppable. How many in Seoul? Asked. 10,000 ground troops, replied his aide, a woman named. Heavy vehicles, air support, full invasion force. Nodded slowly. 10,000 alien soldiers with advanced technology. It should have been terrifying, but had read the classified reports. He knew things. They are walking into empty streets, he observed. It was true. The streets of Seoul were completely empty. No people, no cars, no movement. The evacuation had happened in 3 hours. Humans had practiced this. Every major city had underground shelters that could hold millions. They had not noticed them because they looked like subway systems. Above ground, the soldiers searched for enemies. They found nothing. Their commander, a tall officer named, spoke into his communication device. "Admiral, the city is empty. The humans have fled." On the burning crown smiled. "Cowards search the buildings, find their leaders. They cannot hide forever." The soldiers spread out through Seoul. They kicked down doors. They searched homes and offices. They found food still warm on tables, computers still running, television still playing. The humans had left very recently. But they found no humans. In New York it was the same. In London, in Tokyo, every city was a ghost town. They walked through silent streets, surrounded by buildings full of human things but no humans. "This is strange," said to his troops. "Where did they all go?" He got his answer 5 minutes later. The sound came first. It was not loud. It was a low hum that seemed to come from everywhere. The soldiers stopped. Some of them touched their helmets. The hum grew stronger. Then the screaming began. Soldiers dropped their weapons. They fell to their knees. They grabbed their heads. The sound was doing something terrible to them. Their gray skin turned pale. Purple blood dripped from their ears. In the Seoul bunker, Dr. Shin watched with cold satisfaction. Her device was working. "The respiratory system is connected to their hearing," she explained too. "They breathe through membranes in their ears. Certain sound frequencies cause those membranes to vibrate too fast. It creates pain, lots of pain." "How did you learn this?" asked. "We captured a scout ship 20 years ago, 2 crew members. We studied them very carefully before they died." She paused. "We learned everything about their bodies, their weaknesses, their fears." Looked at her. "That sounds like torture." Did not look away. "It was survival. We knew they would come someday. We needed to be ready." Across Seoul, thousands of soldiers writhed on the ground. The sound attack lasted exactly 90 seconds. Then it stopped. The surviving soldiers struggled to stand. They were confused, hurt, and afraid. That was when the second attack began. From windows, from rooftops, from manholes in the streets, human soldiers appeared. They wore simple uniforms. They carried weapons that looked primitive compared to technology, but they knew exactly where to shoot. The joints had told them during training. "Their armor has thermal gaps at the joints. Our weapons can penetrate there." The human soldiers were accurate, very accurate. They had trained for years with virtual reality systems that simulated troops. They knew how the aliens moved. They knew how fast they could react. They knew everything. In 3 minutes, 500 soldiers were dead. Commander screamed into his communication device. "We are under attack. The humans are fighting back. They knew our weaknesses." On the burning crown, Admiral stood in shock. His screens showed the same thing happening in all 12 cities. His invincible army was being destroyed by creatures he had dismissed as harmless students. "How is this possible?" he demanded. His science officer worked frantically at his station. "Admiral, they are using targeted sonic weapons against our troops. They know our physiological vulnerabilities. This information is not public. They must have studied us in secret." "For how long?" "Based on the sophistication of their attack. Decades, Admiral. They have been preparing for decades." Felt something he had not felt in 50 years of conquest: fear. On the ground, Commander led a strike team through the streets of Seoul. The sonic attack had given them the advantage. Now they needed to push. "Focus on their officers," ordered. "Kill the leaders first." His team moved with precision. They had studied military structure. Officers were identified by marks on their armor. Without officers, soldiers became confused. They were trained to follow orders, not to think independently. Humans were different. Every human soldier could make decisions. Every human could adapt. This was another thing they had not understood. In Tokyo, Captain Lee led a different kind of attack. His team used the subway tunnels to get beneath the landing zone. They carried explosives. Human explosives were cruder than weapons, but they still worked. "Set charges here," said, pointing at the ceiling, "and here and here." "Will this work against their ships?" asked one of his soldiers. "Their ships have shields," replied. "But shields only work when they are activated. When ships are on the ground loading troops, shields are lowered to save power." "How do you know that?" "We watched them for 50 years. We learned their habits, their procedures, their mistakes." The charges were set. His team retreated through the tunnels. 3 minutes later, the explosions tore through the transport ships from below. Fire erupted. Metal screamed. 7 ships were destroyed before a single understood what had happened. Admiral watched his fleet's status screens turn red. Ship after ship was reporting damage. Troops were dying in numbers he had never imagined. These humans, these students, were killing his soldiers like experts. "Pull back," he ordered. "All ground forces return to orbit now." But retreat was not easy. The humans had planned for this too. As soldiers ran for their surviving ships, they found the streets changed. Barriers had risen from the ground. Buildings had become fortresses. Snipers fired from every window. General Sung watched from the Global Defense Center. His old eyes were sad but determined. "They are trying to retreat," his aide reported. "Let some of them go," Sung replied. "We want survivors. We want them to tell their admiral what happened here." "Why, sir?" Sung looked at the screens showing soldiers falling. "Because fear spreads. A dead enemy tells no stories, but a terrified enemy, he tells everyone." In Seoul, Commander managed to reach a transport ship. His armor was damaged. His troops were scattered. He had landed with 10,000 soldiers. He was leaving with less than 2,000. As the ship lifted off, he looked down at the city. It was no longer empty. Humans stood on the rooftops watching him go. They did not cheer. They did not wave. They just watched, silent, waiting. Had conquered 6 worlds. He had seen species fight back with desperation, with rage, with fear. But he had never seen anything like this. The humans fought with calm, with planning, with knowledge. They had studied the like that were insects under a glass. And then they had found every weakness and exploited it perfectly. They were ready, said to himself. They were always ready. On the Burning Crown, Admiral received the casualty reports. 47,000 soldiers dead. 31 ships destroyed. All 12 landing zones were disasters. He had expected to conquer Earth in hours. Instead, he had lost more troops in one day than in his previous 5 conquests combined. "What are they?" he asked no one in particular. His communications officer had an answer. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from Earth. They want to talk." Straightened his uniform. Perhaps the humans wanted to negotiate. Perhaps they would surrender now that they had proven their point. The screen flickered. General Sung appeared. He was an old human with white hair and calm eyes. "Admiral," Sung said, "you came to our world expecting students. I hope you enjoyed your first lesson." "You killed my soldiers," growled. "You invaded our home. We defended it. There will be more lessons if you stay. Each one will be more painful than the last." Leaned forward. "You cannot win. I have 140 ships. I can burn your cities from orbit." Sung smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Yes," he said, "you can burn our cities, but we already know how to live without cities. We built bunkers deep enough to survive your weapons. We have food for years. Weapons we have not used yet. And patience." He paused. "We were educated, Admiral, but our education included survival. You can try to destroy us. Others have tried. We are still here. The dinosaurs are not. Think about that." The transmission ended. Admiral stood alone on his bridge. Through the viewing window, Earth hung in space, beautiful and blue, and full of creatures far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The first lesson was over, but the humans had many more to teach. Admiral did not sleep for 3 days. He sat in his command chamber and read reports. He watched recordings of the battles. He studied the human attacks again and again, looking for answers. The answers terrified him. Every human strike had been perfect. They knew exactly where to attack. They knew exactly when to attack. They knew exactly how to hurt soldiers in ways that medical teams could not fix. This was not luck. This was not courage. This was knowledge. Deadly patient, carefully gathered knowledge. They have been watching us longer than we watched them, said to his senior officers. They learned everything about us, our biology, our tactics, our weaknesses, and they told us nothing. How is that possible? Asked Commander, still recovering from his wounds. We monitored their communications for 50 years. We never detected any research about us. Because they hid it, replied. They knew we were watching, so they showed us what they wanted us to see: schools, universities, peaceful debates, and all the while they were preparing for war. The High Council demanded a report, had to explain how the greatest military force in 17 systems had been humiliated by a species that had never left its own planet. He told them the truth. We underestimated them. They are not weak because they value education. They are dangerous because of what they educate themselves about. They study war the way they study everything else. Completely, thoroughly, obsessively. The council was not satisfied. They ordered to continue the invasion, use orbital bombardment, destroy the human cities, force surrender. Prepare the attack, but before he could give the order, something unexpected happened. A human ship appeared. It was small, barely visible on sensors. It was not armed. It carried only one passenger. The ship transmitted a message. Ambassador requested permission to speak to Admiral directly. Officers recommended destroying the ship immediately. It could be a trap, a bomb, a trick. But was curious. He had lost thousands of soldiers to these creatures. He wanted to look one in the eyes. He wanted to understand. Let her come, he ordered. Ambassador was brought to the burning crown under heavy guard. She was a small woman, barely 1.6 meters tall. She wore a simple gray suit. She carried no weapons. Compared to the massive soldiers around her, she looked like a child. But she walked without fear. She looked at the aliens around her with calm, curious eyes. When she stood before Admiral, she bowed slightly. Thank you for seeing me, Admiral. Studied her. You are very brave to come here, or very foolish. Perhaps both, replied. Humans often are. It is one of our characteristics. Why are you here? To negotiate surrender. Smiled. No, I am here to give you a gift. She reached into her pocket. Every guard raised their weapon, moved slowly and pulled out a small data device. This contains Earth's history, she said. All of it, our wars, our weapons, our strategies, everything we have done to each other over thousands of years. She held out the device. I think you should read it before you attack us again. Took the device cautiously. Why would you give us this information? Because you made a mistake, said. You saw our schools and thought we were gentle. You saw our universities and thought we were soft. You looked at a planet of learners and assumed we had nothing to teach. She stepped closer. The guards tensed but raised a hand to stop them. Admiral, we built schools because we needed them. We valued education because without it, we would have destroyed ourselves long ago. Humans are not naturally peaceful. We are naturally violent, cruel, destructive. Everything we have built, we built to control our own nature. His voice was soft but strong. Your species has conquered 17 systems. You have never faced serious resistance. You do not know what a truly desperate enemy looks like. But we do. We have been our own desperate enemies for our entire history. You are saying we should fear you, said. I am saying you should understand us. Read our history. See what we did to each other when we had no one else to fight. The wars, the weapons, the strategies that we developed over centuries of killing ourselves. She paused. And then imagine all of that knowledge, all of that experience, all of that terrifying creativity united against a common enemy, against you. Looked at the data device in his hand. And if I read this and still choose to attack, then you will understand why that choice is a mistake, but you will still make it, and you will still fail. The admiral was silent for a long moment. Then he ordered his guards to escort to a secure room while he reviewed the data. He started reading. He could not stop. The history of human warfare was unlike anything had ever seen. Other species fought wars. They conquered territory. They killed enemies. But humans did something more. They innovated. They adapted. They turned every defeat into a lesson and every lesson into a weapon. Read about trenches that stretched across continents. He read about weapons that poisoned the air and made soldiers drown in their own lungs. He read about bombs that could destroy entire cities in a single flash of fire. He read about submarines, invisible hunters in the deep oceans, about aircraft that could drop death from the sky, about missiles that could cross the planet in minutes. But more than weapons, he read about strategies. Humans had spent thousands of years thinking about how to kill each other more efficiently. They had written books about it. They had built schools to teach it. They had turned violence into a science. One passage caught his attention. It was from a human military leader named Sun, who lived thousands of years ago. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Understood now. The humans had known they had studied them for decades, and they knew themselves very well. They knew exactly how dangerous they could be. He read about World War I, millions dead in 4 years of fighting. He read about World War II, tens of millions dead, cities burned, populations erased. And then he read about the Cold War. 2 human nations had pointed weapons at each other that could destroy the entire planet. They had lived with that threat for decades. They had developed strategies for fighting a war that would end their civilization. And they had called this period peace. Set down the data device. His hands were shaking. He called for Ambassador to return. When she entered his chamber, he looked at her differently now. She was still small. She was still unarmed. But he saw what she truly was. A representative of a species that had been waging war against itself since it first picked up a stone. Your species is insane, said quietly. Yes, agreed. We know. That is why we work so hard to educate ourselves, to control what we are, to become something better. But you have not forgotten what you were. We could not forget even if we wanted to. Our violent nature is part of us. We have simply learned to direct it, to channel it, to use it only when necessary. She stepped closer. Admiral, you have 2 choices. You can leave our system and tell the galaxy what you have learned, or you can continue your attack and discover firsthand what humans do when someone threatens our existence. The Council wants Earth conquered, said. Then the Council will watch your fleet burn. We have weapons you have not seen yet, strategies we have not used. We showed you our basic abilities. We have not shown you our true strength. His voice was steady. We developed those weapons to use against ourselves, to fight enemies who knew us as well as we knew them. Your soldiers, with respect, are not that kind of enemy. They fight by rules we abandoned centuries ago. Was quiet for a long time. He thought about his fleet, 140 ships, the pride of the empire. He had believed nothing could stand against them. Now he was not so certain. I need to speak with the Council, he finally said. Nodded, of course, but I ask you to consider one more thing. What? Humans have a saying, do not wake a sleeping giant. We have been sleeping, Admiral. We have been focusing on education and progress and peace. We have been trying to be better than our nature." She met his eyes. "You came to our world and tried to make us afraid. Instead, you made us remember what we are. You reminded us of every war, every weapon, every dark skill we had put away. And now we are awake." She smiled, and there was something ancient and dangerous in that smile. "You should hope we go back to sleep." She turned and walked out of the chamber. Admiral sat alone, surrounded by the history of a species that had spent its entire existence learning to destroy. He looked at the blue planet on his screens. And for the first time in his long career, he considered retreating. The High Council rejected Admiral's request to withdraw. They called him a coward. They demanded immediate bombardment of Earth's major cities. They wanted this small, stubborn planet crushed as an example to the galaxy. Had no choice. He was a soldier. He followed orders. He positioned his remaining fleet in attack formation. 103 ships, still an enormous force, still enough to burn Earth's surface clean. "Target the 12 major population centers," ordered. His voice was heavy. "Fire on my command." On Earth, General Sung received the alert. The fleet was moving into bombardment position. Humanity had perhaps 30 minutes before fire rained from the sky. "Begin Phase 3, Sung said. Captain Park stood in the Seoul Command Center. Around him, officers worked at their stations with calm efficiency. They had trained for this. They had known that the aliens might choose destruction over defeat. "Phase 3 active," reported. "All stations confirm ready." Lieutenant looked up from her screen. "Sir, are you sure about this? Once we show them what we have, there is no going back." Nodded slowly. "They left us no choice. If they want to see what humans can really do, we will show them." Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, 3 massive structures began to rise. They had been hidden there for 15 years, built in secret by the combined efforts of every major nation. The official records called them research stations. The real name was Project Thunder. These were weapons, the most powerful weapons humanity had ever built. They broke the surface of the ocean and pointed toward the sky. Inside each structure, human crews ran final checks. Thunder 1 ready. Thunder 2 ready. Thunder 3 ready. In space, Admiral was about to give the order to fire when his sensors went crazy. "Admiral," his science officer shouted. "Energy readings from the planet's surface. Massive power signatures. We have never seen anything like this." Looked at the data. 3 points on Earth were glowing with energy levels that should have been impossible. The power output was higher than his entire fleet combined. "What are those?" he demanded. Before anyone could answer, the first beam fired. It was a column of pure white light that reached from the ocean to space in less than a second. It hit a warship and passed through it like the ship was made of paper. The ship exploded. Then 2 more ships exploded. The beam had punched through all 3 in a single shot. The second beam fired. 3 more ships died. The third beam fired. 3 more ships died. In 9 seconds, humanity had destroyed 9 warships. Stood frozen on his bridge. His unbeatable fleet was being torn apart by weapons he could not understand. "What is this?" he whispered. On Earth, Dr. Moon Sora watched the data feeds with satisfaction. She was the lead scientist on Project Thunder. She had spent 20 years of her life developing these weapons. "Particle beam accelerators," she said to her team. "We figured out the physics 30 years ago. We spent the next 10 years making them smaller, and the next 10 years making them powerful enough to matter." "Should we fire again?" asked her assistant. Sora shook her head. "Not yet. Let the Admiral think about what just happened." In space, Admiral was indeed thinking. 9 ships destroyed in 9 seconds. He had 103 ships when the attack began. At this rate, his entire fleet could be eliminated in under 2 minutes. His communications officer spoke urgently. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from Earth." The screen flickered. Dr. Moonsara appeared. She was a middle-aged woman with gray-streaked hair and tired eyes. "Admiral," she said, "this is Dr. Moonsara speaking on behalf of the United Earth Defense Council. What you just experienced was our first defensive measure. We have more." She paused to let that sink in. "We did not want this war. We do not want to destroy your fleet, but we will if you force us to. You have 1 hour to withdraw from our system. After that, we will assume you intend to continue your attack, and we will respond accordingly." The transmission ended. Looked at his fleet status. 9 ships gone, thousands of soldiers dead, and the humans were claiming this was only their first defensive measure. He thought about the human history he had read, the weapons they had developed, the wars they had survived. If their first measure could do this, what could their second measure do? Their third? "Admiral," Commander said quietly, "we should withdraw. This is not a battle we can win." "The Council ordered us to attack," replied. "The Council is not here. They did not see those weapons. They do not understand what we are facing." Was silent for a long moment. He thought about his soldiers, his ships, his duty, but he also thought about survival, about the future of his species. The humans had shown him their history. They had shown him what they were capable of, and now they were showing him their weapons. He made his decision. "All ships," he announced, "fall back to the outer system. We will wait for reinforcements before deciding our next move." It was an excuse. Everyone knew the reinforcements would not change anything. If Earth could build 3 weapons like those Thunder stations, they could build more. The Empire did not have enough ships to overwhelm human defenses. The fleet began to withdraw. On Earth, cheers erupted in command centers around the world, but General Sung did not celebrate. "This is not over," he said. "They will come back, or others will. We need to send a message that reaches beyond this fleet." He ordered a channel open to all ships and to any other vessels that might be listening in the region. Captain Park appeared on the screen. He had been chosen to deliver humanity's warning to the galaxy. "This message is for Admiral, for the Empire, and for any other civilizations watching," began. "Today your fleet attacked our world. Today we defended ourselves. But this message is not about today. It is about tomorrow." He spoke clearly and calmly. "Humans are a young species. We have only recently left our planet. We have only recently learned that we are not alone in the universe, but we are not harmless. We are not weak. We have spent our entire existence fighting each other, and we have become very good at it. We built schools and universities to tame ourselves. We developed laws and governments to control our violent nature. We chose education over instinct because we knew what we were without it. Monsters." Paused. "Admiral has read our history. He knows what we have done. The wars, the weapons, the millions of deaths. He knows that humans are capable of terrible things. And he knows that everything we did to each other, we can now do to anyone who threatens us. We do not want war. We want to learn. We want to explore. We want to meet other species and exchange knowledge, but we will not be conquered. We will not be enslaved. We will not surrender." His voice hardened. "This is Earth's warning to the galaxy. We were educated, but our education included every weapon, every strategy, every brutal lesson that war could teach. We learned peace. We also learned everything else. Leave us alone, and we will be the greatest friends you could imagine. Attack us, and you will meet the species that nearly destroyed itself 100 times over. You will meet humans at war." He leaned forward. "Choose wisely." The transmission ended. Admiral watched from his retreating flagship. He thought about everything he had seen and heard. The weapons, the history, the calm, confident way the humans had defended their world. He had conquered 11 planets. He had never been defeated, but he knew in his heart that he would not conquer Earth. Not today, not ever. The humans were too dangerous, not because of their technology, not because of their numbers, but because of what they were. A species that had spent thousands of years learning to kill and then had decided to stop. That decision could be reversed at any time, and did not want to be the one who reversed it. He gave the order to begin the long journey back to space. On Earth, humanity watched the alien fleet disappear into the darkness. They had won, but they knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy now knew about Earth, about humans, about the quiet, educated species that carried monsters inside them. Some would be afraid, some would be curious, some might be foolish enough to test human resolve again. But one thing was certain, the universe would never look at Earth the same way again. And in classrooms around the world, students continued to study history, science, strategy, peace, and war. Just in case. 1 year had passed since the fleet retreated from Earth. The world had changed. Humanity knew now, without any doubt, that they were not alone, that dangerous forces existed among the stars, that everything they had secretly prepared for had been necessary. Admiral Park, promoted after the war, stood in the new Global Assembly Hall. Representatives from every nation sat before him. Behind him, large screens showed the stars, and among those stars 3 small lights blinked. These were ships, alien ships, but not enemy ships. 3 civilizations have made contact in the past year, announced. The Empire has not returned. They have officially declared Earth a forbidden zone. Their warning to other species says that humans are too dangerous to invade. There was quiet laughter in the hall. The idea of humanity being called dangerous by a species that had conquered 17 systems was strange, but it was also true. However, continued, not all species see this as a reason to avoid us. The Collective, the Republic, and the Free Traders have all requested peaceful contact. They are curious about us. They want to learn who we are. Counselor, formerly Lieutenant, stood to speak. She had become the head of Earth's new Interstellar Affairs Division. We have had preliminary conversations with all 3 groups, she said. They are cautious but friendly. They have heard about what happened with some are afraid of us, some admire us. All of them want to understand us better. Elder Sung, the old general, raised his hand to speak. His hair was white and his body was frail, but his mind was sharp. They fear us because of what we showed he said slowly. That is good. Fear keeps the peace, but fear alone is not enough. If we want to survive in this galaxy, we need friends. We need allies. We need to show that we are more than just warriors. What do you suggest? Asked. We invite them here, Sung replied. We show them our schools, our hospitals, our art and music and science. We show them the other side of humanity, the side that chose education over destruction, the side that wants to learn and grow and create. He paused. We show them why we are worth knowing, not as enemies, but as partners. The assembly voted. The invitation was sent. 3 months later, the first alien delegation arrived on Earth, not as invaders, as guests. Ambassador, who had faced Admiral alone on his flagship, was chosen to greet them. She stood at the landing field outside Geneva and watched 3 different ships descend from the clouds. They were tall and thin, with silver skin and large eyes. They were short and sturdy, with brown fur and gentle voices. They were somewhere in between, with blue scales and quick movements. All 3 delegations stepped off their ships and looked around at Earth with wonder. It is beautiful, the ambassador said. Your world is so full of life. We have worked hard to keep it that way, replied. We made many mistakes in the past, destroyed much, but we learned. We always try to learn. The delegations were given tour. They saw the great cities that humans had rebuilt after centuries of war. They saw the universities where millions of students studied everything from ancient history to quantum physics. They saw hospitals where doctors saved lives with technology that would have seemed like magic a century ago. And they saw the memorials. At the World Peace Museum in Geneva, the alien visitors walked through exhibits showing human history. They saw the trenches of World War I, the ruins of World War II, the mushroom clouds that had ended one war and nearly started another. The ambassador stopped before a display showing the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. "You did this to your own species?" she asked quietly. "Yes," replied. "2 cities destroyed in seconds, hundreds of thousands dead. It was the most terrible weapon we had ever created." "Why do you show this to us? Are you not ashamed?" Shook her head. "We are not ashamed. We are honest. This is what we were. This is what we can still be if we must. We show you this so you understand why we work so hard to be better, why we value education, why we choose peace whenever we can." She looked at the alien ambassador. "We do not hide our darkness. We study it. We remember it. And we make sure it never happens again unless someone forces us to use it." The ambassador spoke next. "They told everyone that humans are monsters, that you are too dangerous to approach." "They are not wrong," said. "We can be monsters, but we can also be teachers, scientists, artists, healers. We choose what we want to be. They forced us to choose violence. We hope you will give us the chance to choose something else." The delegation spent a month on Earth. They attended classes at universities. They ate meals with human families. They watched children play in parks. They saw humanity not as warriors but as people. And slowly, carefully, friendships began to form. Professor Shin, the who had helped defeat taught a special class during the visit. Students from all 3 alien species sat beside human students in her lecture hall. "What we learned from war," the class was called. Every seat was filled. "Humans have fought thousands of wars," told her students. "We have killed millions of our own kind. We have developed weapons that could destroy our entire planet, but we are still here. We survived. And we learned." She walked among the desks, passing humans and aliens alike. "We learned that war is sometimes necessary, that there are things worth fighting for. Freedom, family, home. When they came, we fought because we had to. We would do it again." She paused at the front of the class. "But we also learned that war has a cost. Every battle, every weapon, every victory, they all leave scars on our bodies, on our minds, on our world. We learned that peace, when possible, is always better than war." A student raised her hand. "Then why do you still teach about war? Why do you still prepare weapons?" Smiled sadly. "Because we know the universe is dangerous. Because we know that peace is not always possible. We hope for the best, but we prepare for the worst. That is what our education teaches us. And if another species attacks you, then we will defend ourselves with everything we have, with every weapon and strategy we have developed over thousands of years." His voice was calm. "But we will also offer peace first. We will always offer peace first, because we know what war costs and we would rather pay any other price." The alien student was quiet, then she nodded. "I think I understand." "Good," said. "Understanding is the first step. It is always the first step." The alien delegations left Earth after their month was over. They returned to their own worlds with stories about humanity, not just stories of war and weapons, stories of schools and hospitals, stories of art and music, stories of a species that had looked into its own darkness and chosen to build something better. Word spread through the galaxy. Earth was dangerous, yes, but Earth was also something else. A world of learners, of builders, of survivors who had earned their peace through rivers of blood and decided never to pay that price again unless forced. Other species began reaching out. Some wanted trade, some wanted knowledge, some just wanted to talk. And in the center of it all, humanity continued to do what it had always done. They studied, they learned, they prepared, for war, yes, but also for peace, for discovery, for a future among the stars. Admiral Park stood on the balcony of the new Interstellar Embassy, looking up at the night sky. Beside him, Counselor watched the same stars. "Do you think we made the right choice?" asked, "showing them everything, our history, our weapons, our darkness." Was quiet for a moment. "I think we showed them the truth. That is all we can do. And if they decide we are too dangerous, then we will deal with that when it comes. But I think they will see what the missed. We are not dangerous because we love violence. We are dangerous because we survived our own violence. We walked through fire and came out the other side. That is not something to fear. That is something to respect." Nodded slowly, Earth's silent warning. Yes, we showed the galaxy what we could be. The monsters and the scholars, the destroyers and the builders. Now it is up to them to decide which one they want to meet. Above them, the stars burned in the darkness. Somewhere out there, alien civilizations were discussing Earth, debating humans, wondering about the strange species that had nearly destroyed itself 100 times and had still reached for the stars. And on Earth, in schools and universities around the world, the next generation was learning. They learned history and science. They learned art and music. They learned about the wars their ancestors had fought and the peace they had won. They learned everything, because that was what humans did. That was what humans had always done. They were educated, they were dangerous, they were kind. And the galaxy was just beginning to understand what that meant. In her classroom, an old professor named finished her lecture. Her students, human and alien, packed their bags and headed for the door. Before the last one left, she called out, "Remember what we discussed today. War is easy. Peace is hard. Education is what makes the difference. Humans learned that lesson through centuries of suffering. You have the chance to learn it from books instead." The student, a young, nodded. "We will remember, Professor." Smiled. "Good, now go learn something new. That is how we change the universe, one lesson at a time." The student left, stood alone in her empty classroom. She thought about the war, about everything humanity had done and everything they had chosen not to do. They had won, not just the battle, but something more important. They had shown the galaxy that strength and wisdom could exist together, that a species could be dangerous and still choose peace. It was Earth's silent warning, and Earth's quiet promise. We were educated, but that education included everything: the darkness and the light, the weapons and the wisdom. Choose wisely how you approach us, because we have learned all the lessons the universe can teach. And we are very, very good students.